Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of HomeTech. I am Seth Johnson, joined as always by Jason Griffin. Jason, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Seth. How are you?
Good. We're gonna have to rename you. I think you're gonna be like Jason Griffing or something. Like you are always on the road.
It's been a lot of travel this year. It's abnormal for me. I don't typically travel this much, but part of it's the new job with One Vision. I've been doing a little bit more traveling with that, but also this time of year, you know, we travel a little bit. My wife and I don't have any family in Denver with us, and so typically we go for Thanksgiving out on the East Coast, which, as you know, if you listen to the show, we were there a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, I should say, and then we are now down here in beautiful Arizona for Christmas and enjoying some really nice desert weather. It's a great time of year to be down here in Arizona, so we're having a good time, and wanted to make sure we carved out a little bit of time to sit down and record an episode with you, Seth.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. Taking a little bit of time away from some much needed vacation to sit down and chat a little about what's going on in the news of the home tech news, I guess is what we should say.
That's right, because I will tell you very quickly before we get started here, there's a beautiful swimming pool in the backyard that's heated to a nice balmy temperature of 88 degrees. And I've got some family out there swimming right now. And instead I'm in here recording with you. So, hope you appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I do. It's a little cold for these parts.
Yeah, it's all relative, I suppose.
Exactly. No, it sounds like you're having a great time out there. So, let's go ahead and get started so you can get changed and jump into that pool.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got just you and I, Seth. We're gonna no guests this week. We're gonna jump through a couple of news stories here, and of course wish everybody happy holidays and Merry Christmas coming up very soon. It's right around the corner, which is always hard to believe, but we're gonna we look forward to having a fun episode here. Before we do that, we want to mention a couple of things that we typically do. We like to thank our patrons of the show. These are individuals who have gone to support our efforts here at the podcast by visiting HomeTech.fm/support. Once again, that's HomeTech.fm/support. If you're interested in contributing to our efforts here, you can do that for as little as $1 a month. And
you get to keep saying
Seth,
that.
I will say that's a true statement. We do get to keep saying that. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But again, it's HomeTech.fm/support. If you're interested in supporting our efforts here, go check that out. We've had a bunch of people over the years we've been doing the show go and do that, and we really appreciate it. If you even get in at that base level, that $1 a month level, we'll send you an invite to our private Slack channel, The Hub, which has become a really great community, a very vibrant conversation going on in there every day. A lot of fun to check that out. So go take a look. As we were alluding to, Seth, there was some news circulating in the last couple of weeks that Patreon, which is a platform we use to do this, had changed some policies where truthfully, you could enter, I think, $1 a month, but they changed like the fee structure is how I understand it, right? And so basically with the contributors or the donors were actually incurring some fees, which I think made that minimum contribution like $1.39 a month. And so not a big deal, obviously, but they've reportedly taken a lot of backlash on that and decided to go back to the previous structure, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of alluded this on the last show, and it kind of like corrected itself over the time that we were not recording, and we did the Technology.fm happy hour. No, it's not happy hour. It's the technology fireside chat. That's what it was. Yeah, fireside chat. So it kind of corrected itself over the last week. What they were. There's transaction fees. Everybody knows there's transaction fees, and then there's a little fee that off the top that Patreon has to do to keep their website running and their servers going. So, if you're pledging $1 to us or anybody else, we're not seeing that full $1. We never have. But what they tried to do was kind of give us more, and then they shifted those transaction fees back over to people who were donating $1. So, I think there was just a little bit of backlash on that from people who I think mostly where you would have a problem with that is where people were only doing like $1 or $5 or something like that, it hits you disproportionate from someone who's doing more, so
Right.
and for Patreon there's all sorts of different ways you can fund projects. So they have said they'd like to still be able to address those particular issues, and they're going to try to do that someday. So it's just something we'll have to keep an eye on and see what they come up with, because at the end of the day, I mean, every interview I have heard with, I think his name's Jack Conte, who's the guy who started at Patreon. It just sounds like a really great company. Like they have everybody's best interest in mind. And this was kind of just a misstep. I don't think they communicated it right, maybe, and it got a little bit of backlash. So I'm glad that, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but I'm glad that it's kind of resolved itself and we don't have to have an awkward conversation with our patrons. I will say that I went and looked on there because I really don't go on there very often. There was a couple of people who came in at the $1 level and I was adding them into the hub. If you are, I noticed something strange. There was a lot of declines on there. So if you are a patron of the show, and mostly who I saw were people over in the UK. So I don't know if there's something weird going on with that, but just about every one of our patrons who I know to be over in the UK have been declined. So maybe check on that, guys. If you're getting declines on something like that, do us a favor and go in and check that out. I haven't really emailed anybody because I was waiting to see if it would resolve itself over time, but I've been noticing this trend of guys who are over in the UK having declines come back on us. So check that out. And, we really do appreciate the patronage. Really do appreciate it. Keeps us going, keeps the show going. And we're doing more stuff now, Jason. You've got this really cool thing coming out every week. I guess you're going to try and do the new HomeTech top 5 email.
Yeah. We wanted to quickly mention this on the show. We won't spend a ton of time on it, but we do have an email newsletter that we've got a bunch of folks subscribed to at this point, but we definitely want to try to add some more value there. And so what I've realized, Seth, is that you and I spend a lot of time, and we follow probably between the two of us, well, not probably, at a minimum between the two of us, 40 or more different blogs or websites and forums and things that we pull stories from. And what I've realized is there's a lot of time and effort that goes into sort of curating that. And a lot of these are tech blogs that follow stories that are way outside of the smart home realm. They're technology stories, spanning everything from smartphones to, cars and you name it, right? And so a lot of what we do involves pulling out the relevant stories and putting together a show every week with curated topics. And so I decided that we should probably leverage some of that effort and put together a quick email that we'll probably send out over the weekend. I think that's a good time. People can sit with their Saturday morning or Sunday morning coffee and sort of get a quick digest of what we believe are the top 5 most important home tech stories of the week. So we want to make it a quick read and keep it really fast. You can open it, scan it in about 30 seconds and figure out if there are stories that you want to dive into and take a look at. And of course, some of those stories will be stories that we talk about here on the show and others won't, but it's just a different way to kind of consume that content and get a quick overview of the week. So if you're interested in receiving that, of course, totally free, head over to HomeTech.fm and just look on the right-hand side of the website. You'll see our sign-up form for our newsletter, and we'd encourage people to take a second and do that, and we'll send that out every week in addition to our current weekly email we've been sending out for a while, which is simply kind of a quick summary of the show and a reminder to go check that out. So I'm excited about it. I think it's a fun idea, and the first one we sent out this past weekend was received very well, and so I hope it adds value and that people enjoy it.
Yep, I definitely enjoyed it. So keep it up, Jason. It's really good. So yeah, thanks for jumping on that and really taking the lead on that. It's an awesome little newsletter. Chris here in the chat says I'm time poor, and this really helps me catch up. So I kind of the same way.
Yeah, that's 100% the goal. We realize that we put a lot of time and effort into doing that every week because it's part of putting the show together, and we love doing it, but we want to really put out a valuable quick snapshot for people who don't have that time and hope again that you find it valuable. So let's move into the story to the show here, Seth. Again, a number of news stories we want to touch on, and this first one Fairly big story. Seth got a number of headlines throughout the week and saw a bunch of different dialogue about it. A big home tech vulnerability. And,
HomeKit. Not
yeah,
us.
Freudian slip.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have no vulnerabilities here, I promise.
None that we know of.
A big HomeKit. Yeah, right. Big HomeKit vulnerability. And Seth, I typically defer to you on these stories. I think you generally have a better handle on some of the intricacies involved and are typically better at, frankly, explaining them than I am. So I'm going to turn it over to you here to kind of tee this one up.
This happened, it happened a while back. I guess it was responsibly reported to Apple, and they basically fixed it before the issue was announced. So that's good. These things, I think we've talked about this before. Things happen, and it's how the companies respond to those things happening that shows you if you're working with a good company or not. Google, Apple, they all really try and jump on security things as fast as they can and fix them. If there's something out in the wild that's a vulnerability, they'll try and jump on it and get it done. And so Apple had fixed this particular vulnerability. This one is and we'll link to this Medium article that I thought was a pretty good write-up. They're a little bit more sensational about kind of the issues, I suppose. They say Apple built a super secure door, left the key in the door, and forgot to build a wall around the door, which, okay, I guess. I mean,
that's one way to put it.
Yeah. So here's what really happened. There was a vulnerability that allowed people outside of the house to send commands into the HomeKit environment and trigger either lighting scenes, devices. Unlock your doors could be a scary one, I suppose. Have to be a pretty technical person to do that, but they could do this remotely. It wasn't something they could do within the house if they were on the Wi-Fi. It was all done remotely, and that was part of, if you are right now, if I'm outside of the house, I can go to my phone, flip up, open up the HomeKit thing, and press the button to turn on and off my Christmas tree lights. That's a really cool use case of using HomeKit right now. That iDevice thing that I think you're still probably using in the nursery for the lamp, I moved it from my garage to the Christmas tree. So that's now I can say, hey Siri, hey Siri, turn on the Christmas tree lights, and it happened. Like I can say, turn on the tree, turn on the Christmas tree, whatever. It figures out what I'm talking about and turns it on. I think that's really cool. So the problem is when I'm outside the house, that has to go through Apple servers, and then it gets directed back down to my house. And I think that this Medium post actually has a pretty good explanation of it. It says, imagine HomeKit as a butler for your home. And when you're not home, you can send an iMessage to it, asking it to do things for you. Say you want to unlock the front door. You would just send a message to the HomeKit butler in this case, asking it to unlock the front door. Once HomeKit receives the message, it should check that the message is sent by you and then unlock the door. But really what was happening was HomeKit doesn't check to see who sent the message, and it will just happily unlock the door to whoever someone asks to do it. There's some asterisks on that as well. You have to know this really long string. It's called a unique identifier. I can't remember how long these things are. They're very long. Like if you see one, you notice you've seen one before. They're very common in the programming world, but they're a very long string of hexadecimal digits, basically. And you have to know that each individual HomeKit device has a unique ID. So you have to know that, and it's normally impossible for anyone to figure out what those unique identifiers are, but there have been two bugs, one in watchOS and another in iOS, which allow someone to figure out those unique identifiers. So this is I would say this is a pretty complicated hack, to know how to do in the first place. The second part of it, the first part, just sending the message, is not very complicated, but figuring out that unique identifier is very, very complicated. That would be extremely difficult for anybody to just randomly guess. And so that's not going to happen. But Apple is, I guess it's already have fixed one of those vulnerabilities in the latest version of iOS. And I'm not sure if they fixed it in the Watch OS yet, but they're still working on a proper fix for the future iOS release. I want to say I saw an iOS release come by that said it was fixed. So if it's fixed, it's fixed, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. But on a high level, on a low level, let's just go to the lower level. No one is going to use this to break into your house. Like, this is the dumbest thing ever. Yeah. Like, if somebody's going to break into your house, they're going to walk up to your door and pull on the door. And if it doesn't open,
smash in a window,
they're going to throw a brick through your window. Yeah. That's all there is to it. And they're into your house, and there's nothing you can do to stop that. They run to the master bed, steal the jewelry, run out before the alarm can even go off.
Yeah.
Done. So, in reality, not a huge issue, but it's a security issue, and Apple have jumped on it and fixed the problem. So, hey, good for Apple. Good for them. It's the first HomeKit vulnerability that we've actually heard of, which is, it's kind of nice that when something does happen, that they're still committed to the platform enough to just get on it and get it done.
Yeah.
Get something fixed and push out an update.
Yeah. I think that's always one of the, as somebody who follows the space and considers myself certainly a technical person, but not totally down in the weeds when it comes to industry-leading security protocols and this sort of thing. Typically I find you peel back a layer or two of a lot of these stories, and the headlines are always terrifying, right? The headlines are always meant to get you in, get you to read the story. And I'm not super cynical about that. I don't fault the outlets for doing that. Their job is to get eyeballs on their website, and I understand that. But I think it does take a bit of a discerning eye or a trained eye sometimes to read between the lines and figure out, okay, yes, this was a vulnerability. Yes, it's something I should be aware of, but probably not something I need to be yanking out all of the HomeKit gear from my home because of, right? And I think that's one of the unfortunate sort of realities about the way these security, network security and vulnerability stories typically get reported. I think there's a lot of people who read these blogs who don't take the time, the little bit, Seth, that you explained there about there's this complicated key and how would they ever find that, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I always think...
I posted one in there in the chat. I don't know if you had time to look at that and see, like, it's like, that's just a randomly generated one I found on Wikipedia. Yeah. Like, I can generate these in 2 seconds. It's not easy to come up with that. It would take years for a computer to guess that number.
So, like you said, hats off to Apple for quickly addressing it. Obviously, they're going to. That's not, it's sort of, that is what you would expect for them to do. So it's not like they deserve a medal for doing that or anything. But I just think looking at this sort of story from the consumer perspective, that's always the angle that I kind of end up falling on and injecting into the story for what I can for people who tune into our show. Is like, a lot of these stories, you've got to actually read past the headline. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't, right? They just come away with this general impression that the Internet of Things or the connected home is terrifying, which I think is unfortunate. But let's move on, Seth, unless you have anything else to add there. Let's move on to a number of TV-related stories, streaming video stuff. We want to catch up on that. There was a couple of developments this week that we wanted to hit on. One of the big ones, reported, I believe, originally by CNET, is that YouTube TV will launch the Roku and Apple TV apps in early 2018. And this is actually a delay by them. So they were originally supposed to launch sooner than that, and they have actually pushed that back. I've got the CNET site open, and unfortunately, for anyone who visits CNET, they've got one of those audio players blasting in my ear right now. And so I'm going to close the site. But yeah, the ultimate goal for, or at least the stated goal for YouTube TV to come to these bigger streaming players, I believe was late this year, and it has been pushed. YouTube TV has been covering a ton of ground. I think I saw a story recently. I mean, they just launched in 2017, and I think they're in like 84 markets here in the I believe those are all in the U.S. I don't know if any of those are in Canada or overseas, but making a lot of headway, and I think a fairly compelling offering. But if you're looking to access that content on a Roku or Apple TV, which are of course two of probably the biggest, if not the two biggest set-top boxes for accessing streaming content, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer.
Yep, and your memory is pretty good, Jason. It's you pretty much nailed. I'm kind of looking through the article now, and you pretty much nailed all the points on it. But I think getting YouTube TV on Apple TV and the Roku is going to be really good for that platform. For whatever reason, I thought YouTube TV could already have been done inside the standard YouTube app for whatever reason. But I guess it's going to require this new app. This is, I mean, from what I've been hearing, this is probably one of the best value and the best working streaming subscription cable company, right? Because you're doing $35 a month. It has DVR functionality to it, so you can record shows and watch them back later. Gets all your local TV channels, ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC. And you get tons of other channels like Disney Channel, Fox, ESPN. I think this is probably one of the best values right now in streaming TV. And I wonder if this is, we've heard of that Google Fiber service that they were pushing out. It does like high-speed internet and TV and everything. I wonder if Google has kind of put the brakes on that, and so they're not going to roll that out to any more cities.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is kind of what they were like. They looked at down the road and they said, "Wait a minute, the internet's going to be there. It's already there in most of these places. Like, we don't need super fast internet." I wonder if they said, "Let's just put our efforts into this and getting our content streaming online in a decent DVR offering and for a decent price. People are going to flock to this." And I have to wonder if that was their strategy when they put the brakes on rolling out expensive fiber deployments in neighborhoods, just to say, okay, we'll make the software. We'll be the input zero that we're talking about all the time, and just do this streaming thing, because it's definitely. I mean, we're looking at let's see, Sling TV, Hulu, PlayStation Vue, DirecTV Now. Those are the competitors right now. And I think YouTube TV is still probably the best one out of there. I hear good things about PlayStation, but YouTube definitely. If I was to go back to that and doing that and that kind of thing, I'll probably go with YouTube and ditch the antenna if I really really wanted to. So seems like the best offering out of all the streaming services right now.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a top candidate. I know I've been talking about it for a while, and we just haven't. Probably after the holiday craziness settles down, we're going to actually really dig in and look at cutting the cord at my house. And I think YouTube TV and Hulu is also a very compelling one, and I think very well positioned, which we've talked about on the show before. Some of the reasons why Hulu actually is in a very good position to make a really good run at this sort of offering. But of course, YouTube, you've got Google money behind it. I think your point about Google Fiber is interesting. I don't know how much of a correlation there is there in terms of their overall strategy. I think in terms of the delivery of it, potentially. But, my understanding of the reason they sort of pulled the plug on Google Fiber had more to do with just the difficulties of getting infrastructure in place, and that they're really moving those efforts to to wireless, which wireless ISP delivery is a big thing with 5G technology developing, and other companies are. I think we might have reported a story, or at least had one that ended up on the cutting room floor recently about Verizon's 5G plans, and so that's actually a big technology to look out for in the future. The wireless delivery of your internet signal instead of having coax or fiber come up to the house. That's an interesting topic in general. But coming back to YouTube TV, I agree with you, Seth. It's a compelling offering, and it's certainly I think at the top of the pack. At $35 a month, it looks like you get a pretty compelling offering, and probably the biggest barrier right now, like for me and what I would imagine for a lot of people, is, well, what's the hardware to deliver it? And until they get Apple TV and Roku established, I think they're going to be missing a large portion of the market. But I think their play right now is getting it out into as many of the cities and metropolitan markets as they can, and trying to get that coverage, and we'll see how it goes. So thought that was definitely a story worth mentioning. Also on the streaming video front, some great news for sports fans, Seth. Of course, as listeners of the show know, I consider myself amongst them, a big NFL football fan, even though my Broncos are having a pretty lousy year. We love watching, and we're starting to see more of football, at least, including other sports, come with streaming options. And so I think it's a good sign for sports fans. That's always been one of the sort of the last frontiers for streaming media, and sports are a cash cow for a lot of these networks. And so those contracts are pretty protected, and how all of that works is a little bit crazy. But, Verizon had an exclusive streaming deal for NFL football that has recently come to an end, or will come to an end very soon. And so entering the next season of football 2018, we will have some additional options. You'll have, looks like NBC will be streaming Sunday Night Football to mobile phones and other devices here starting in 2018. And Verizon will still continue to, with, it looks like, some expanded offerings. The big thing that changed there, as we talked about before the show, Seth, is they will not have those exclusive rights anymore. So it looks like they're making some moves to sort of expand their offering and try to protect a little bit of market share. But to me, the broader overarching story here that's really important is that you're seeing an increasing penetration of streaming options in live sports, which has been a tough area for these providers to negotiate deals and make that content available to consumers.
Yeah, tough deals. We were talking about this before the show, trying to make heads or tails of the couple of news stories that hit on this, and it was like they were so very nuanced into what exactly the device or screen was that was going to be displaying NFL content. And each one of these deals is very, very, very unique, and looks like, I mean, at the end of the day, what I think here, it's good for us consumers, right? Like, if you want to watch NFL live, it seems like you'd be able to do that from most devices these days, and just about on any NFL day that they're broadcasting, right? Like, I think Sunday is on NBC, but you have Verizon doing, I think, the rest of the days. So that's pretty cool. I think that's good for consumers, and as long as you know kind of where those games are going to be broadcasting on, you should have the ability to go over and pick them up and display them. So pretty good. The sports ball here in the U.S. I wonder what it's like overseas. Like, I wonder what the quote unquote football games are like over in the UK, or even cricket.
Real football, as they'll
call
it.
The ones where they actually have to run around for 90 minutes or some crazy amount. Like, and cricket I know is huge. Like, I wonder what the streaming options for those are right now overseas. So
yeah.
This is all good news, I guess. I suppose here in the U.S. I know we didn't talk about this last week or the week before or pretty much ever, but net neutrality is kind of going to be an issue, and I wonder what all these streaming exclusivities and that kind of stuff. I wonder what's going to happen with that when we have the end of the net neutrality and all those things going to play sometimes next summer, I think is when I heard, when all this is going down. Like, I wonder what the ramifications are going to be for all these particular deals and how that's going to work once that's done.
Yeah. Well, I think most of these deals will be negotiated by large providers who will ostensibly prioritize that traffic, right? I think the bigger implication will more likely be for all the other stuff. But that gets into a whole nother conversation.
Well, my point is, like, if you're watching Verizon's NFL stream on an AT&T network, are they going to slow that down and get? I mean, you'll see it, but you'll see instead of the 1080p version of it or the 4K version or whatever, you'll see the the horrible VCR 270 version or whatever. Like, it'll get all pixelated. Like, that's the question of what will happen with net neutrality and all these deals. Regardless, the ISP that controls the line from the pole to your house is really the arbitrator on what's going to look good inside your house with streaming. I mean, that's what's going to happen here.
Well, no, it's a fair point. And I think, again, some of the stuff, Seth, as I was sitting there listening to you talking, it totally, I think, just underscores the point. You're like, well, NBC will have Sunday night, but then it's like Verizon will have this if you have Verizon and blah, blah, blah. It's like, we're still clearly not there yet. It's not as easy as it is for traditional pay TV subscribers to simply know, okay, I've got DirecTV, I'm going to get all the games, and that's it, right? That's the end of it. And that's the unfortunate reality, but I think this is a good step in the right direction. We're seeing more options there. Speaking of traditional broadcast TV and DirecTV, quickly want to touch on, and not a story we're going to dive into and dissect here, but DirecTV does have plans apparently to be the first broadcast provider doing HDR as broadcast. And so they've got a number of broadcasts lined up here. Seth, I know one you were particularly excited about, the Brian Setzer Orchestra 14th annual Christmas Rocks concert.
Yeah, well, you got to say that differently. It's Christmas Rocks. It's got the exclamation mark on there.
There's an explanation. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. Live from Granada Theater in Santa Barbara, California. Right. So make sure you check that out. Oh, actually, it's already passed. We've missed it now.
There you go.
That's too bad.
Yeah, on a serious note, hope that actually happened. I know Santa Barbara is just getting ravaged right now with all the fires out there. So if anybody listening is out in that area, we hope you're doing well. Total side note, but it's just crazy. Having lived out there, I've been following those fires, and it is really really unfortunate. So anyways, coming back to the story here, number of sporting events, some basketball games, it looks like a hockey game I think they've got on the agenda here as well. So won't get into all the details of the dates. We'll have a link to that, HomeTech.fm/191, if you want to go check out what some of those specifics are. But I think pretty exciting that we're seeing HDR come to broadcast, and we'll look forward to seeing more of that.
Yeah, I like the other one on here that I think would be really cool to see in 4K is the 4K HDR, not just 4K, but actual real 4K, not 4K. Is the Rose Parade on January 1st. I mean, everybody. I mean, that's a pretty huge parade. It would be really awesome to see those parade floats and all the costumes and bands and everything in 4K. I think that could be really well done. So I wish I was in side note too. I was in Best Buy, kind of walking around looking at things, and I was kind of wanted to see what. They have those giant TV walls with all the TVs on them and everything. And I kind of wanted to see what the different 4K OLED TVs look like compared to nice 4K TVs. Holy cow, man. Like, I know I see them in the shows. I just don't have any appreciation for them there because they're at shows and I'm like, yeah, that's TVs at shows, whatever. Man, just sitting there and actually having some time to sit down with and look at the Sony XBR TVs. Holy moly. Those things are beautiful. And I think the LGs are the same panels. They look just as good. But from what the sales guy was telling me, that the 1080p content you can get on the Sony OLEDs, the processors are just magic, Sony magic. It looks a lot better for the downscaled stuff. Or upscaled stuff. So they had some really good demos there running in Best Buy. I was kind of impressed. So, if I had an extra $3,500 laying around, I might have a new TV to put under the Christmas tree this year, but not gonna happen this year.
I'm right there with you.
Support the show, HomeTech.fm /
Gonna need a few more patrons.
Right. Quite a few more.
But some really cool things happening with TV in general, not only on the content delivery and accessibility side that we talk about so much, but with the technology in general, and with OLED and HDR. It's an exciting time in video, in my opinion, and so definitely a cool opportunity to be covering it and talking about it every week here on the show.
There were no bad TVs there,
right?
Like, I was looking at the expensive ones. I mean, but there were no really I didn't see any, but there were really no if you're watching a 4K TV with 4K content, looks pretty good. But man, the ones that really stood out were those OLED TVs and specifically the Sony and the LG.
Yeah.
So. If you have a chance to go check those out, my Best Buy has a Magnolia store in it, so it kind of has the special viewing rooms off to the side where you can see the super high-end TVs. Check those out if you can. So
yeah, definitely. All right, well, moving on, Seth. This is a little bit of a revisit to a story that we talked about. I don't know, a number of months ago. It's the CAVO, CAAVO. If you're listening and you want to look this up, and this is one we've gone back and forth on, Seth, on the show, and I come down on the side of I think this is a really interesting product. If you're not familiar with it, it's a little bit difficult to explain succinctly, but I'll do my best here. It's a device that's got I think 8 HDMI inputs, and it takes all of the video signals from those and effectively does what a universal remote might do, only they argue better. So anybody who listens to the show is probably familiar, not probably, certainly familiar with the idea of a basic universal programmable remote, right? You program in macros, you hit a button, it blasts out some IR commands, or maybe network or 232, depending on the device, and off you go. Well, what this one is doing is actually a little bit different in the sense that it is using what they call machine learning, or I think they might even call it like CAVO learning now. They came up with like a branded name for, what's that?
Machine vision learning.
Yeah, machine vision
powered.
CAVO vision.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But they're basically analyzing the user interface of these various devices that are plugged into it in order to do some very sophisticated control with a simple remote that comes with the unit. So go read the story. We're going to link one from The Verge. I think this is actually a good story for anybody trying to get an understanding of what this product is and what it's doing differently. It's going to start shipping, it looks like February 14th. So that was the main update here. Priced at $399, right? $400. So not a cheap device. But certainly for anybody with a big, AV stack of a bunch of different devices, I think their idea here is that, $400 is not outrageous. That's about in line with, a high-end programmable remote on the DIY side of things. And they're getting some funding, $17.5 million in venture capital for a total of $32.5 million is what they've raised, which is pretty impressive. I still can't decide if this is like the most brilliant idea ever or just totally insane. But I personally, Seth, I love it. I commend the innovation, and I would love to see this product. Would love to see it succeed. Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this a couple of times before. I'm still on the fence on this one. I can't get my head wrapped around the appeal of this. Like, it's a $400 universal remote that has special magic features that I don't know. Like, it just doesn't seem like this is something that the people who are in the price range for a $400 universal remote are going to go for. I don't know. I just don't see this product goes away the day we have input zero, right? Like, this is a product that wants to be input zero, but it's not. It hangs off to the side. But as soon as we have a device or a TV or whatever that does input zero correctly, this product, an entire market disappears overnight. So I'm wondering how long this will last. I know there's a lot of people that are involved. Like, the guy who started this is the guy that started what was it, Sling TV, which is it's another one of those like really neat products, but like really it was one of those neat products that look great to geeks and people who are in technology. And how cool is it if it's 2016 or 2006 and I can watch TV on my iPhone or phone or whatever, like, but most people didn't get that product or understand how it worked. And it wasn't like a mainstream product. And I feel like this is going to kind of end up in that same spot. Like, yeah, that's a neat little product. It's a neat toy. It's cute what they're doing, but I'm not sure what success they're going to have with it. And maybe the technology ends up somewhere else. Maybe they can move this technology out to other things and make other things better. Give the technology, or not give the technology, but embed this technology into something like an LG TV, where it has 4 HDMI inputs instead of 8, and it can do all this stuff, and it's got CAVO built into it. Like, the software seems a lot more compelling than this hardware piece. And we've got Chris over there putting wooden boxes of different different types in our chat room. Thanks, Chris.
A number of them.
But yeah, we have to mention that it's got the wood vinyl wrap on both. Oh my God, on both the unit itself and the remote, like the zebra wood stuff, faux wood. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. Like, just give me a device that looks like my other devices. I don't want it to stand out like this. Like, no, this isn't going to work in my house. Like, my wife would say, take that. No, go away with that.
That's not going to pass the design committee.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, if they come out with different types of woods, maybe, but like this one's not going to work here. Just not. And it's an interesting concept. I will give them that. But I'm just not sure of the long-term success of something like this. I think the software is very much more like the machine. What do they call it? CAVO Vision. Yeah, CAVO Vision. That's much more interesting than the device itself. And maybe that's their long play. Like, maybe CAVO ends up inside of an LG or Sony TV, and that becomes our input zero. That would be cool. But having this $400 extra device that plugs into my other, $30 to $400 HDMI devices, like, that's not that appealing to me. So we'll see where this goes. We'll see what happens with it come February 14th. Maybe this is a runaway success and I'm wrong, but I see.
Well, no, I'm sorry. You make some good points. I think it's they've got an uphill climb ahead of them, but I think there's some compelling features, sort of the universal search that they allow you to just plug in the boxes and then it can search all of them. I think it's interesting. And I would encourage anybody who's even the least bit intrigued by it to go read this article that we're going to link, because I think it actually does a good job and it makes a fair assessment of the challenges that the team is going to face. But it also highlights some of the unique things they're doing, and generally the author came away pretty impressed. And so we'll see. Again, time will tell. But I think it's a really interesting product, and I love seeing a fresh take on this sort of thing. Yeah. And so I think it's definitely worth a read.
I think they've got a great pitch. I mean, the first video they had was with Walt Mossberg, and you could go back and watch that. It's on the article there. I believe they linked to it somewhere. Yeah, there's a YouTube link to it. So go check that out if you haven't seen this product in action. And Walt sitting there doing some interviews on it. Like, they've got a good pitch, but I just understanding where a device would fit, where this particular device would fit in someone's home. That has the number of devices that are going to be needed to plug into this. It's not as compelling as I think geeks and people want it to be. Chris Gamble actually in our chat tonight actually had a good quote this morning. It's tech for tech's sake, and I'm not a fan of devices like that, or just tech for nerds. Like, that's great, but what about regular Joes?
Chris also has a number of really good. The pictures keep coming. There's a wood skateboard and a wood mix. I think that's a mixing bowl. I'm not quite
sure. Mixing bowl, yeah.
Anyways,
looks great.
Yeah, some fun in the live chat tonight. So thanks for keeping things interesting there, Chris. Let's move on. Our very last story of the week that we want to touch on is an update on the Denon Sonos legal battle. And so for anybody not familiar, the quick version is that Sonos went after D&M Holdings Incorporated, which is Denon Electronics, I think, parent company. I don't remember how the relationship there works, but point being, Sonos felt that Denon had infringed on a number of their patents with the HEOS system, and it appears as though a jury agrees. And so there was a number of questions being put to the jury, and ultimately came down that they have awarded Sonos a judgment of around $2 million for damages, finding D&M Holdings, I guess, guilty. I don't know if that's the correct term, but on all four of the key criteria that Sonos had provided, the preponderance of evidence, Denon's infringements were willful, clear and convincing evidence, a tough legal standard of any that so basically Denon had said that the patents were invalid, is what that one comes down to, and that was refuted. And then if assuming those patents were valid, Denon had infringed on them. So, I didn't do a great job. I'm not a lawyer of summarizing those, but point being, the case has sort of come to a close here, and Sonos appears to have come away with a pretty substantial victory. I don't know how much money $2 million is to Sonos, if that's a big deal. I think probably the bigger deal, if I had to guess, is setting a precedent and coming away from this case victorious.
Yeah, I just looked them up real quick. The 3 patents in question are the system and method for synchronizing operations among independent devices, which is one of Sonos's big patents, right? To keep the music in sync between multi-room audio devices. That's pretty much what Sonos is known for, right? So that they came down for Sonos in that method and apparatus for controlling multimedia players in a multi-zone system. So basically, the user interface facing to be able to control and basically turn on audio in different dynamically controlled audio and dynamically grouped zones, like putting different rooms together that aren't all the same all the time, or every zone in the house you can put together on a Sonos system. That patent. And the last one is a method and apparatus for adjusting volume control levels in a multi-zone system. So it's kind of that's kind of interesting that Sonos has a patent on that. But man, I would not want to be a Denon Hios dealer right now because I have to be wondering if Sonos is not putting in some kind of sales injunction on this, where they are asking the courts to say halt all sales until this is all figured out, or just halt all sales altogether until Denon comes up with a different way of doing multi-room audio and not infringing on these patents.
Yeah, it's a tough place, and thank you for summarizing the 3 different things there. And again, there was sort of 4 criteria the judge said they had to consider and decide separately, and they came down on all 4 in Sonos's favor. So it gets a little bit, I guess, nuanced there in terms of what the legalities were and what they were deciding. But I think the simple takeaway is it all came down in Sonos's favor, and it is not good news for D&M Holdings, although they're a very large company, and I'm sure they'll weather it. It's going to be a ding on them. I think I agree with you, Seth. I'd be a lot more concerned about this story as a Hios dealer. And what does this do to prospective sales moving forward and sales out in the field already? And, where does that software end up? And who knows? So it could be a bit of a mess, but definitely a story worth reporting and keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, definitely. And as a dealer, keeping a close eye on, especially if you're a Denon dealer, keeping a close eye on if the product is going to be able to be sold in the future here. I'd be really worried about that until they can figure out a way around the patents. If the damages don't cover that, I don't know, but I would suspect that Sonos is kind of, when Denon launched this, we kind of looked back and said, they kind of copied and pasted pretty much everything that Sonos did. Even the instruction manuals had almost like plagiarized versions of how to deploy and set up the device. So it's kind of interesting to see, what will happen with this in the future, with not only this lawsuit here, but what will happen to the Denon Hios line.
Yeah. All right, Seth. Well, I've got a nice warm pool calling my name here down in Arizona. So,
well, you better, 88 degrees is not very warm here in Florida.
Really? That feels like a warm bath to me.
Yeah, well, that's you in Denver, but here in Florida, tap water is 88 degrees.
That is fair. That's fair. Anyways, this was great. I, want to thank everybody, of course, as we always do, for tuning in. And I'm just thinking through the dates here. Yeah, this will be our last show before Christmas. So for everybody listening, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. And we, again, really appreciate you tuning in. We're, as we enter the new year, Seth, actually nearing 4 years. And 4 years of doing the show, and episode 200 are both right around the corner, which is really hard to believe. But it's always around this time of year we start reflecting back on that and realizing how quickly it passes. And it's been a lot of fun, and we look forward to another a great year ahead. We'll try to get an episode out next week before the new year. I'm not sure with my travel schedule, Seth. We'll have to touch base offline and figure out how that's going to work. But definitely, again, want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for tuning in. Another fun episode.
Absolutely. I'll echo the same sentiments, and thanks again for everybody for tuning in, and thanks to everybody who helped out in the live chat tonight. I really do appreciate all the feedback we got there. So
yeah.
Jason, hope you have a Merry Christmas, and I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, Seth. Sounds good.